What we learned is that black people smelled. All right, what about Jewish people? What's their thing? How are they different than other people? Their religious beliefs were different, but also they were greedy and selfish people. Also had strange sexual habits and so forth and so on. So what does everybody know about the Irish? They
Get in fights.
get in fights because they're drunk. All the Irish people do is drink. That's the Irish. Both Italians are gangsters, and Irish are drunk, and Jews are greedy, and black people smell. Okay? For example, if we expanded Medicaid to everybody, right, give everybody a Medicaid card, we would be spending such an astronomical sum of money that, we would bankrupt the nation.
It's funny, sometimes American journalists talk about how bad a country is because people are lining up for food. That's a good thing. In other countries, people don't line up for food. The rich get the food and the poor starve to death.
How do you find the sincerity of Sandinista leaders?
I was impressed. I was impressed by Father Descoto because he is a very gentle, very loving man. Ortega is an impressive guy.
Did you have suggestions for them how they could organize their PR a little bit more effectively?
I think yes. I mean, the point that I try to make to many of the people that I spoke to is they're getting killed in the American media. Mm-hmm. They just cannot compete. Reagan and his people are so sophisticated. They own the airwaves, of course. Reagan, the media, every time Reagan gives them a photo opportunity, thousands. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you very much for telling us another lie. The media, of course, is not allowed to ask sharp questions of the president. That's not allowed. My point to Ortega is they are not getting their message of what they are trying to do out to the American people. People are concerned about the state of the world. If many of us are concerned that our kids are not going to grow up and live a normal life because there's a nuclear war, you say, who's to blame? Let's blame somebody. Who do we want to blame? Why is there a policy in this country which is producing more and more nuclear weapons, which is increasingly antagonistic to the Soviet Union, which is trying to destroy Nicaragua? How do we change that policy?
How can you practically change that very uneven distribution?
Well, I think you can change it politically. I think you change it through tax laws. I think you change it through public ownership of significant parts of the economy.
But I remember, for some reason or other, being very excited when Fidel Castro made the revolution in Cuba. I was a kid and I remember reading that. And it was just seemed right and appropriate that poor people were rising up against rather ugly rich people. And there was Kennedy and Nixon talking about which particular method they should use about destroying the revolution. And I remember the irony is we learned the history later on. Kennedy was saying that Nixon was too soft on communism. I mean, pick up a point that Rick was making. In Cuba, we should deal firmly with Fidel Castro. And usually I'm sufficiently unemotional not to be sick, but I actually got up in the room and almost left to puke. People are concerned about the state of the world. If many of us are concerned that our kids are not going to grow up and live a normal life because there's a nuclear war, you say, who's to blame? Let's blame somebody. Who do we want to blame? Why is there a policy in this country which is producing more and more nuclear weapons, which is increasingly antagonistic to the Soviet Union, which is trying to destroy Nicaragua? How do we change that policy? I think it's also fair to point out that when we were in Moscow, for example, I think most of the people here also were extremely impressed by their public transportation system. The stations themselves were absolutely beautiful, including many works of art, chandeliers that were beautiful. It was a very, very effective system. Also, I was impressed by the youth programs that they have, their palaces of culture for the young people, a whole variety of programs for young people.
We didn't do a study of these things, but people there seem reasonably happy and content. I didn't notice much deprivation. Howard, is that a fair statement?
Yeah, that's real fair. I was really surprised by the beauty of the city. And in many ways, I think it's a good partner for Burlington because the pace of life there was pretty similar to here. People were very open and friendly. I guess one of the things that surprised me about the Soviet Union in general, all of the cities we were in, was our ability to move around on our own, particularly in Moscow and Leningrad. Most of us broke away from the regular tour and just went off on taxi cabs, subway rides, and we met people, we looked up people who were friends of friends, we visited people in their apartments.
Were those visits unsupervised at all?
Totally unsupervised. In fact, some of us met with the people who you could really think of as dissidents who were unhappy with life there, and other people who were pretty satisfied. But it was just like moving around in New York or Boston.
So you don't believe in the profit motive, free enterprise? If I have a better mousetrap, I make more money.
There's something to be said for free enterprise on a local level.
and competition. But what we're happening in our society is we don't live in a free enterprise society. You live in a corporate capitalist society where in virtually every single industry you have giant multi-billion-dollar corporations competing, driving the small businessman
But let's
out.
pretend it would work without all that kind of acquisition of power that is unfair and doesn't...
Do I believe that the profit motive is fundamental to human nature? The answer is no. I think the spirit of cooperation, that you and I can work together better rather than having to compete against each other and destroy each other.
Bernard Sanders, Mayor, Burlington, Vermont.